Hey, this is Alex Burkett, the co-founder of Omniscient Digital, a premium content marketing agency, and you're listening to the Long Game Podcast. In this episode, I'm talking to Samar Owais. Samar is an email strategist and conversion copywriter. She also runs emailsdoneright.com, where you can go sign up for her email list where she picks a fight every week with common email marketing tropes and common mistakes that businesses are making. This conversation was awesome. We covered how she went from a content writer to an email copywriter focused on SaaS and e-commerce and all the steps in between, how being a realist and thinking strategically from the start can fundamentally change your approach to email marketing and the results that you're getting. And we also complain about annoying email marketing practices like lazy abandoned cart emails. We also obviously lavish praise on some things that companies are doing right, of course. So you're going to find this episode educational. I certainly did. But I also found it incredibly fun and honest. Without further ado, here's my conversation with Samar Owais. Actually, you know, it'd be cool to intro this conversation is one of the podcasts I was listening to where you were interviewed. You talked about you used to be a content writer and not a copywriter, right? Yeah. And now you focus on email copywriting. Yeah. So I don't know how you phrased it, but it was something around the lines of you couldn't even wake up in the morning. Yeah. Like you were so burnt out in terms of content writing.
I didn't think of it or even categorize it as depression at the time. But now when I look back at it, it's not normal to not want to get out of the bed in the morning. And so I had hit that mental block so hard that I just couldn't get over it. And I feel like I don't talk about mental health because it's not something I struggle with, and I have so much empathy for people who do, because I've seen my sister go through it. But I always feel ill-equipped to talk about it simply because it's not something like that one bit is the only thing. And so I feel like I'm going to put my foot in my mouth or something if I talk about it.
Well, it's also, I mean, it's a kind of murky area scientifically, but even when you're going through something like that, I think it's hard to notice those signs because they're so subtle. So that's what I wanted to ask about. We were just talking about how I've got, some insomnia stuff where it's like my mind kind of, when I realize I'm overworking myself, like my mind is turning too much, right? Like in the middle of the night, I'm like solving business problems. Yeah. And that to me now I look at as a sign that I may actually be working on the right things, but I'm maybe overworking and not giving myself enough time to recharge. Whereas that other sign that you were talking about in your interview, it's like you didn't have the motivation to do the work that you were supposed to be doing, which would relate to sort of a different solution where it's like, then you maybe think, hey, what am I doing and what are my goals? And do I want to shift these around? But it seems like a very subtle thing. So I wonder, how long were you a content writer and how long did you go through that period where you had that lack of motivation? And how did you decide like, hey, I need to do something differently here?
Okay. So I was a content writer for about 10 years, right? So I got married in 2007, December 2007, moved to the UAE in 2008, and I was bored, couldn't find a job. And so I just decided to run a Google search for writing jobs online, right? And I found a website that was paying me $10 an article, and I thought I had hit pay dirt, but really what I hit was a content boom. And so pretty quickly I realized that I was not going to move ahead, my business was not going to grow, but I also realized that I liked that lifestyle. Like freelancing was my jam. I really enjoyed the work when I had editorial backup so that I could earn. And so again, for the first 2 years of my life, I was just Googling through running a business. And it was really more like a side hustle because I was a newly married person. I was, more intent on enjoying life. But slowly and surely, I just started getting serious about my work. And once I started focusing on the business part of it, I learned how to market myself. I learned how to set up a referral system. And so I went on to grow my business, and I wrote content for entrepreneurs like Paul Jarvis, popular blogs like Copyblogger, brands like Marriott and Intercontinental, MetLife, and so on. And in between, there was a lot of startups as well who were coming up at that time and needed content. And so now that the business part was done, I thought I had hit the sweet spot, right? The rates I was charging, I was getting But then slowly, I just started losing interest, right? I would say yes to a project because I knew how to do it very well. But then I would sit down and I wouldn't do it. And like I was spending the same amount of hours working, I just wasn't working, if that makes sense, right? I would waste time online. And then I became this person who was always under the gun, who was submitting things like just before the deadline, just enough to save my reputation, because that's something that I guard ferociously. And so even at that time, that was something that I wasn't willing to sacrifice, right? But then, and I kept thinking, maybe it's, I'm not charging enough, right? Because when you are not feeling motivated by the work, it's usually money. And I'm somebody who is satisfied by money. Money plays a big role in my business. And so I was like, you know what, I'll just raise my rates. Maybe that will work. And then I got to a point where I was quoting brands and businesses $1,000 per blog post, and they were accepting, and I was still not feeling it. And I remember the last post that I quoted was $1,000 per blog post, and I ended up saying no to them and returning the money, saying, I'm sorry, this is not something that I can do, and I apologize. Around that time, Joanna, we launched her course, which was 10x FC, right? And so I'm thinking, at this point, I still think I'm a content writer. I still think that content is the way forward for me. And I'm thinking maybe it's the way I've set up my business, right? Maybe it's all the challenges that I'm facing as somebody who's living in the UAE at the time. And if there's anybody who can teach me how to navigate these murky waters, it's Joanna Wee. And so I started taking her course. And in that course, she drips out modules every month. And by the second month, I knew that the problem wasn't that I didn't know what to do or how to structure my business. It was, or that even I was burned out. It was just that I was done writing content. It was just not, to put Marie Kondo, sparking joy in me anymore. And but just from then on, I've always kind of been an implementer, right? So any advice people would give me, I would implement. It's probably why I was able to Google my way into starting a business, because every advice I would learn or read about, I would go and implement it, right? And that's how very quickly I realized whose advice was, pretty shit and whose advice was actually working. And so writing was still the only thing I was really good at. And so I started experimenting with different types of copy, right? If you are done with content, all that's left is copy. And so I wrote sales pages, I wrote website copy, I wrote landing pages, and I pretty much cried through them all. Like I was not enjoying them. And then Val Geyser was in the course with me, and her business was growing by leaps and bounds. She was implementing everything that Joanna was teaching us. And she put out a call in the Slack group saying, I'm looking for subcontractors. And so she was, I think, already familiar with the fact that I was experimenting with different types of copy and trying to find what would stick for me. And so I messaged her and I say, Jo, Val, I haven't written emails, but I had a blog at the time, and I told her I have a newsletter that I send out. Here are the samples. And I'm a fast learner and I don't make the same mistake twice. Will you please take a chance with me? And she did. And she gave me 2 weeks to write a re-engagement sequence. I think it was 5 emails. That first week, I was researching only. But every single day that first week, I got up from my bed with a spring in my step. And whereas I was staying in bed until noon, that first week where I was researching, I was up at 8. Right. So my husband would leave for work and I would sit down on my computer and start working, and I wouldn't get up until he would come back. And so it was that marked change in my mental well-being almost was something that I noticed first. I was like, I don't remember feeling this way for a few years. And so it just, that was like my big clue that I found my niche. I am not, email is it for me.
It's really interesting when something clicks like that because it's intangible and emotional. It's like the difference between sailing against the wind versus having a tailwind with you. Yeah. And also I really I resonate with, it sounds like it was difficult to admit to yourself that you didn't like maybe what you were doing before. And it took a while to really say that and articulate that and try something new. For me, we talk about this a lot, the co-founders of the agency and I call it now productivity hoarding, where my sign now is 1, a lack of interest, but 2, sometimes it's physically painful for me to like open my laptop and work on a task. And that task will sit at the bottom of my to-do list for like 2 months. And then it's a strange cycle because then I feel guilty about not doing it. And that further pushes it down where I'm less likely to do it. And then there finally comes this moment where I eventually just take the item off my to-do list. And there's this sigh of relief because then I can go focus on the things that I actually want to work on. So I definitely relate to that. We're probably going to talk mostly about the copywriting side, the latter part of your journey. But just so I get some more background, it would be interesting to know what led you to be interested in content writing in the first place. Was it something about the lifestyle? Did you see other people making money doing that? It's an interesting choice, especially like I think now it's common. I think we know about it now. Like it's a viable pathway in a career, especially in freelance. But what initially drew you to blog and content writing?
It was the only thing I was good at, right? So my story is that I got married right after graduation, right? So I always say I got married, I graduated, got married, and moved to a new country within 10 days of these things happening. And so, whereas most of my friends and college mates were looking for jobs, I was getting bored, right? But I was also kind of always interested in reading and writing. And I was one of those kids who had a blog when personal blogs were a thing. And I used to write for a citywide blog back in Karachi, right? And so I remember thinking, if Pakistan has a blog like that, then I'm sure UAE does too, right? And all I have to do is search on Google. And I was really just looking to find a blog that I could contribute to, but I ended up finding a website that was paying for my work. And it kind of just was circumstantial. It was coincidental. It was a lot of things, but it was writing and I didn't care. And money speaks to me. So I was like, I'm getting paid. I don't care about personal blogging anymore. I want to do this. And so that's how I got started with content writing.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's cool. I think I had a similar, well, not totally similar thing, but I was attracted because I was also a big reader and a writer. And I ended up just in college, like putting down my lessons that I would learn from books. And that became, I'm like, oh, this is cool. People are reading this and I can use this as a portfolio. And then I eventually found you could make money that way. So it's interesting how people enter this field. It's almost always somewhat circumstantial and kind of accidental. But then you realize there's a lucrative pathway there. Before we go into the specifics on email copywriting, you did mention something in your background story where you tried multiple types of copy. So website, landing pages, sales pages. I think you said you cried through them all. What's the qualitative difference between those? As someone, I dabble in a little bit of sales page copywriting just by pure necessity, but what do you think the difference is between those and email? And why do you think one resonated more with you than the others?
I think it's the long drawn out process. So if you're looking at a sales page, it's just the idea of writing 5,000 words of conversion focused copy. It's just, it like I could feel my shoulders drooping just talking about this stuff, right? And I need sales pages for my business. I always carry them out. And I am in awe of all the copywriters who can write great sales pages, but it's just not for me. It's such a mental block for me. And also it just weighs heavily on me. Website copy is the same way. I'm in the SaaS world. Every other website looks like SaaS website, all pretty much looks the same, right? And so I'm like, the idea of making them look different when there's nothing different about them, that's not a challenge that excites me. And then landing pages were just not, they weren't. Like at this point, you can tell web pages of any kind are not my thing. The thing with email is that I could understand it very quickly. And even though it is sometimes a long drawn out process, especially when you're doing an onboarding sequence, but my brain at least can compartmentalize it, right? So there's the VOC section, then there's the email strategy section, then there's the copywriting section. And I have, over the years, I've kind of just really identified my strengths, and it's email strategy, then it's email copy. And I would never call collecting voice of customer data my strength, right? So I partner with somebody now who takes care of that bit. And so it's an incredible way to work because I'm dipping in when I need it and I'm doing the work that really excites me, which is the strategy. And then from there, I can go in and out and I can outsource it if I need to. But it's just the word that comes to my brain is compartmentalization. It works for me, or way my brain is wired at least.
It's funny because I don't mind sales pages because I almost feel like there's more room to explore and I don't need to be as concise. So there's some level of constraint that you have within the single email. But then for me, email's always been difficult because of the strategy side. Like you alluded to, you enjoy that part, but it's like there's so many different things you have to think through, which is like customer journey stage and segmentation and like what's the singular goal of this email. And I feel like if you can wrap your head around all of that and then still parameterize or contain like the single email that you're writing, I think that's an incredible field. So is that, do you think in terms of those systems, like it's very holistic compared to writing a single landing page in my experience?
Yeah, when you put it that way, you're right. All of that is going on in my brain when I'm putting together an onboarding sequence. But the way you think about sales pages is how I think about an entire email sequence, right? And so it's not just one email. It's an entire sequence that's building up to do what we want the user to do, right? And I always say conversion might be like this one event, but for that one event to take place, you need to provide the user multiple opportunities. And so that's what an email sequence is. And so it is a journey. And I don't write an email sequence without mapping out the email journey. And so, yeah, based on what you were just saying, it is multifaceted, but it still, everything in it is like, it's pieces, right? So you get the email journey done, then you decide on the onboarding strategy, and then you create an email by email breakdown, and then you write the email copy. So it probably has more steps than usual. It's like the entire project is broken down into more deliverables. Maybe that's what I enjoy about it. But it is so interesting to me that you enjoy sales pages the way I enjoy email.
I wouldn't say I enjoy them, but I'm not intimidated by them. With email, I'm completely flustered. So there's a lot to this email marketing system, right? Like there's the segmentation and the data and the overall overarching strategy. There's automation. If you back up to a certain level, there's even sort of the lead magnets and how you get people on that list in the first place. There's the writing of the copy and the post landing page experience and the customer research, which you said you sometimes outsource. How do you specialize? Or like what specific things do you do within the system when you're talking to clients?
Oh, so I'm email strategy and copy only. And when it comes to SaaS businesses, I focus on onboarding and retention.
Okay.
So,
and you do email or e-commerce as well, right?
Yes, I do e-commerce as well.
And do those, I'm sure there's different purposes for email in those contexts in terms of the strategy.
Absolutely. So I'm very lucky to be in the sweet spot where I work in both industries, and it's purely, again, coincidental. I got my start in email with Val, who is the SaaS email queen, and I learned everything I know about strategy from her. She was a great teacher, a great mentor. And the best part about her that I loved working with her was that she encouraged questions. So I was free to ask questions on her strategy. Why did you do this? And then when I started doing strategy for her projects, she would ask me, why did you do that? And that way I learned to defend my decisions, right? And also streamline my thinking. Why did I think I needed to do this? And so when you explain it to somebody and when you articulate it, it just becomes so much more clear. And then a few months after I took my business full-time. I moved to Pakistan. I took my business full-time. I found a job with an agency that turned out to be only e-commerce email. And I realized this is so fascinating. I love doing this work as well. And so I kind of fell into both industries, and I realized I enjoyed them both, even though they're quite different in terms of the emails they need. But again, the strategy part of it is what really gets me going. So I think of strategy as thinking and problem solving, right? And so there's no problem that you cannot work through if you give yourself enough time and you know everything that you need to know.
With e-commerce, do you also focus on sort of the post-purchase, the customer marketing, so to speak?
Yes.
Or okay, cool. So there's a common theme in that you're looking at people who have already signed up, not necessarily like the lead nurturing from an email list to get them to the purchase in the first place.
In e-commerce, I focus on lifecycle emails, right? So, and again, I design their email journeys as well. So right from the moment they sign up, so they get the welcome sequence, the abandoned cart, the abandoned checkout, post-purchase, win back, all of that. And I sit down with the brands and I ask them what happens, from the email sequence. So let's say they've signed up for the newsletter, and I sit down with the brand. It's like, what happens then? What are they going to get next, right? And if it's the welcome sequence, what is the offer in the welcome sequence? And that's something that's already decided on the sign up level. But again, I ask them two questions when I'm designing these email journeys for them. I'm like, we need to sit down and figure out what happens or what emails a user or a customer will get when they do what we want them to do. But more importantly, we need to create a plan for the vast majority that will not do what we want them to do. So what emails will they get when they don't do what we want them to do? And so it's me asking these two questions at every stage of the email journey and building out these flowcharts for them, which are living documents that as and when a need arises, we go back in, we edit them, we update them, and then we build out those individual email sequences for them. But yeah, I focus on lifecycle because that's the one I enjoy the most. I try and stay far away from Black Friday, Cyber Monday, because that's a level of stress I do not want in my life. And very few brands want to start thinking about it or even working on it like as early as July or August. So
yeah, I could see that being super stressful.
Yeah, I learned the hard way, and I took it once, and then I was like, it's not for me. I want to stick to lifecycle.
Yeah, it seems like there's more repeatability or like predictability with that stuff too. Whereas like you could really botch or you could really succeed on a Black Friday email, and there may be like external factors that could influence that more than the individual work that you're doing. So it's like, I don't know, a little less data driven, maybe a little less. Like there's maybe less process involved with that. Yeah. So in terms of like, I'm pretty much an email noob in terms of strategy. Like, so you can, explain like I'm five to me on all these things. How do you conceptualize email strategy? What are the dimensions that you look at? I guess like I'm inferring a little bit of like segmentation being very powerful, and then like intent. So like, what are people looking to accomplish? What goals should we set up for them? And like, how do we design the email flows to get them towards this place? But are there other concepts that, I'm a service business, but it's a little bit different. But how should I be thinking about email if I'm going to start a new program for Omniscient?
Okay. So this is very interesting. You need to start thinking about your user and their email journey or their SaaS journey that they will have, right? So what are the touch points that they have? And then how can you get them to do what you want them to do? Essentially, that's, my 5-year-old way of saying conversions, but because like, if I start seeing conversions, that word comes up in every second sentence and it starts sounding like a jargon-filled conversation, right? But yeah, so it's really us sitting down and figuring out at every user touch point, what do we want them to do? And then does this place deserve an email sequence, right? And so for SaaS businesses, it's usually very, very cookie cutter. They sign up for the newsletter, then they get the nurture sequence. The entire purpose of the nurture sequence or the welcome sequence is to push them to the free trial, right? They sign up for the free trial. The entire purpose of the free trial is to get them to become paid users. They become paid users. Then what do we want them to do? If a SaaS business has tiers, we want them to move a tier up. If a SaaS business doesn't have tiers, or even if they do, we want them to become annual payers instead of monthly payers, so that if they become, there's a long-term retention there. And then throughout all of these touch points and the things that we want them to do, I keep asking, what happens if they don't convert? What happens if they don't do what we want them to do? And then usually the answer is send them another email sequence, right? So, and then that is where it gets really interesting, because the conversion line is linear, but then the way you decide what to do with people who are not converting is where it gets really interesting. And so then you sit down and see, what are our options? How do we want to deal with this? So if somebody's not signing up with a free trial, how do we want to deal with this? The most cookie cutter answer is that you want to extend the free trial, right? But I also very, very strongly believe in proactive customer service emails. And I tell SaaS founders all the time, this is the perfect place for a personal text-based email from the founder, only asking them, hey, will you please let me know what stopped you from signing up? It'll help us improve the product and also help other users make realize whether the software is for them or not. And so just proactive customer service emails help you get ahead of problems before they become problems.
Yeah,
and so this is where, sorry, I'm cutting you off, but this is where the strategy, but I believe lies in SaaS emails.
It's so interesting because like I've got this visual of how you're explaining this in terms of like what it would look like on a map. And there's almost like this plan A. So people coming in via whatever lead magnet or however you're getting them in the door, whether that's a free trial or whether it's for us, maybe like we sell a course, maybe that would be like an ebook or a webinar or something like that. And then you've got sort of an escalating chain of asks or value adds where you sort of infer the intent based on the action of the emails. And then at the end, they either take the action, they buy the course, they sign up for the free trial, or they don't. And then you sort of reroute those people to plan B, in which you try to like salvage some of that. But what's interesting, I'm thinking through this, I'm like, all right, well, there's also a clear tie-in with how you're bringing these people to the website in the first place. So it's like, if I'm not bringing in people to our website who would feasibly be interested in a course, then it's like, how can I really expect the email sequence to do its work? So do you work with acquisition teams? Like, do you talk to content marketers and SEOs, or, the people who are bringing in the traffic, who are bringing in those initial conversions to the email list to sort of understand like what people are hoping to accomplish and who these people are in the first place? How does that tie into the strategy?
Yeah, so that part is covered in the VOC section, right? So when I'm researching the users or the ideal users of a SaaS business, that's when I look into all of that. But from a list building perspective, I don't mess with it at all, right? I will go on the landing pages, I will look at all the data that we have, and I will look at the copy that's being had, that's being shown to users before writing an email. Because I always say email is treated like a marketing tool, but it's really a communications tool, right? So I want to see what conversation was started on the website or the landing page or the sign up form, and then continue it in my emails. So if they're saying like, sign up to get a free ebook or something, then that ebook needs to be mentioned in the welcome email, even if you are sending a delivery email with the ebook, right? It's just a friendly reminder of saying, hey, you signed up, you got this ebook, and now we're taking the conversation forward.
Yeah. So my background is in conversion rate optimization, and this resonates with me. We always call this maintaining scent, advertising scent, or pre-click and post-click experiences. It's all on this idea of relevance. So like if you send an ad on Facebook and it's got a certain headline and a certain image, the user then would implicitly and unconsciously expect that message to show up on the landing page itself. So if there's a mismatch, one of the lowest hanging fruits you can do is basically just like match those up, right? Change the headline on the landing page so it actually reflects or implicitly tells the user you're in the right place. You didn't click through to a wrong landing page or something like that. So it sounds like there's a similar maintaining of the advertising scent or the acquisition scent or whatever that is in the email context as well. There's simply does this resonate? Is this relevant? Question at a high level, which I think you alluded to a little bit, but I'd love to explore. Why did you choose to focus on SaaS and e-commerce? What about those interest you as opposed to other industries?
Oh, again, circumstances, and SaaS because of Val, and e-commerce because of that agency I worked at for a couple of months. But it was enough for me. I'm a problem solver at heart. And so when people look at SaaS emails, I look at what problem that is solving. And I take it from there. And I like that in this job, in these industries, I get to sit down and think things through before creating a strategy or an email sequence. And I know that the launch industry is there, but again, this is going to make me sound like the world's laziest marketer, but even the launch industry is so hectic, right? I launch a course, I know it's so stressful, right? And whoever I hire as a copywriter is almost always on call for last minute changes or anything that comes up. And that's not the kind of life I want to live. I think being a mom and having kids and like plays really strongly into it, that I don't like surprises, and I cannot be on call as much. But it's just that SaaS, I think it's because I had great teachers in these two industries, to be honest. It's that. Maybe if I had been interested in launch and I would have, worked with somebody, that they might have sparked my interest. But these were the two industries that I had really good teachers and mentors in, and those are the ones I stick to.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. I also hate one-off campaigns and launches. I've always catered towards CRO, which is incremental. You run 1,000,000 tests and 100 win, and they compound over time, or SEO, which is like a long-term compounding channel. It's not like a one-off campaign is going to win or lose. But public relations and the campaigns team, when I worked at HubSpot, it was always this like this period of silence and planning, and then this mad rush, like waterfall software development. And that never was alluring to me. So I could definitely relate to that. Well, actually, a follow-up question to the SaaS and e-commerce. So like, if you're focused on that in terms of your client services, you also run your own email lists and your own programs for yourself, which is a service business. Do you apply similar tactics and processes, or is it somewhat different in terms of like how you communicate with your audiences for your own client acquisition?
I know. So the cobbler doesn't have shoes. And as my business has grown, I've really struggled to find a marketing plan or come up with a marketing plan that really resonates with me as a person, right? So I am not somebody who can market all the time. It stresses me out. It creates so much pressure on me. And at the back of my mind, I always worry about going back to that old me who did not want to get out of bed in the morning, right? And so I protect my time, my stress levels really fiercely. And so for me, it's starting a newsletter, and just like, that's the level of stress I can handle. Like 1 email a week, which by the way has been on hiatus for the past 3 months because I've been so busy teaching this course. And then even with the course.
Sorry, what course is this?
It's e-commerce email strategy. So I call it a boot camp. It's an e-commerce email boot camp, but what I'm really doing is teaching strategy. And there are 6 it's a live training workshop. And so there are 6 workshops, and I set them apart every 2 weeks. So that there is plenty. I teach it's very, very tactical, and you get email challenges and everything. And all of that takes time to do. It's an implementation heavy program. So I want to give students plenty of time to do what I'm asking them to do, and have the time to figure things out on their own if they need to, and then ask me questions a week later in the Q&A call if they need to. So as a service-based owner, as a business owner myself, I have a quiz on my website. The quiz comes with a nurture sequence and an offer at the end, but that is the limit of my automations in my own business. Everything else is the weekly emails when the emails that write newsletter is active. Other than that, no, Twitter is my water cooler.
I mean, it's the same for us. The cobbler's kids have new shoes thing, where we did try for a little bit to do, our agency is like SEO driven content marketing. So a lot of bottom funnel stuff that's going to acquire users directly. And we tried to do that on our blog for a little bit, but found we didn't have the time or bandwidth or interest. And it also didn't really work for us in the same way that it would work for a HubSpot or Unbounce or something like that. So what we're doing now is what we've found is the only viable pathway for us, given the time and resources, which is like, I love talking to people and learning interesting things. And now we've done this in an interesting way where it takes only the time that I talk. And that's the only time that I put in the research time, of course. Yeah. But then once we complete this conversation, it'll go out to our content growth marketer, who will send it to our podcast editor. That gets surfaced out to all the, podcast services and chipped into a YouTube video and clips. And we have this agency that helps us with that. And then they also form it into a blog post and a series of tweets and LinkedIn posts. And that's like the way that we're doing our marketing, simply because of the constraints of not being able to put the time and effort into SEO driven content. But it's really hard to find that, I think, for services businesses, because you're always doing this for clients. So it's like doing it for yourself is draining and sometimes not as effective.
It is. And honestly, when it comes to the balance between putting our own business and our client's business, we will always put our client's business first, because they're relying on us, they're paying us for it. And which is why, like, I struggled to grow my business for the longest time, right? I worked with Val, I worked with Joe, and I started feeling like the email world's best kept secret, where only Val and Joe knew about me. And I was like, no. So I've learned what I wanted to learn, and now, like, I'm craving recognition, which is when I started looking into growing my own business beyond subcontracting for somebody. And so it's how it's taken me 3 years, but I've realized that the answer for me is never what do I love doing. The answer is always what do I hate doing. And then whatever's left is what I want to do. And I feel like asking me about my interest, or if somebody asks me like, what do you love doing? I'm a blank face. I don't know how to answer that. But if you ask me what I hate, my long list for you is ready. But so that's kind of like the process of elimination is how I've set up my business. And the way that you were just describing how you handle the podcast is how I handle my business, right? So the VOC part was difficult for me. It's not where my zone of genius is. Also, I'm in Pakistan. The time zone difference when I'm doing customer interviews is not ideal. Because we're talking right now, it's 8 p.m. at my end. And so imagine if somebody's in the EST or it's like 12 hours apart from me, it can get really, really late. And from the data analysis perspective, I taught myself how to do customer interviews. I taught myself how to put together and organize the data, but I sucked at the analysis part of it, right? And so I was doing the tactical stuff correctly, but finding recommendations, like finding common themes and stuff was just very alien to me. I wasn't a natural at it. And I was really, really struggling and I was not enjoying it. And so when my business coach was like, all right, so the first stage is where you're fatiguing yourself out the most. What else do you hate about your business? And I listed it out. She's like, all of this, can you outsource it? And I was like, I don't want to outsource because it requires micromanaging people. And I don't want to do that. I'm the worst boss in the world because I give you something to do and I give you a deadline and then I don't check in. And then I don't even check in on the deadline, whether you submitted something or not. I check when I need that work. And so it is a very rare person who will have that ready on time so that it's ready for me when I'm ready to look into it. Anyway, and so I instead now partner with people, right? So it's so for my VOC work, I partner with the brilliant Hannah Shamji. She is interestingly working on a HubSpot onboarding project together right now, and she handled the VOC part. She put together the data the way that I wish I was able to do, right? And the way she analyzes things, it just makes sense to me. I have to go through her report and her analysis and all of that. And at the end, by the time I'm at the bottom of the report, I have my strategy in my head. And then it's just a matter of sitting down with the client and asking them, these are my recommendations. Which of these can you realistically implement, right? Because I could give you the ideal scenario onboarding sequence, but if you can't implement it, it won't convert for you and you're just essentially wasting time, right? So then the clients come back to me and they'll tell me this, and this is something that we cannot implement, but these are the parts that we can. And then as a strategist, then it's my job to find a way through based on what we can do so that the emails actually go live, which is interestingly a very real problem in the SaaS world. You will create all these elaborate email sequences for brands and then they just don't go live. So yeah, I'm sorry, I got sidetracked. What was the question?
No, I have a follow-up one. It was regarding kind of like your own business and how you're thinking about acquiring customers. And what things you like doing and what things you don't like doing. And I actually want to hammer on that point because I think it's pretty profound. You kind of reframed it in this, I think Nassim Taleb calls it via negativa. So it's by process of elimination as opposed to via positiva, which would be by addition. So in terms of like diet or exercise, a lot of people think like, what superfoods can I add? Or what exercises, what crazy routines can I do? And actually, it may be more beneficial to think, well, what toxic foods can I avoid? Or like, what can I stop sitting for 12 hours a day? Like it's like, what can I remove from my life? Can I stop smoking or something like that? And not a lot of people think like that, especially in the career context. And it reminds me of this article that I read from Andrew Wilkinson, who's sort of a mentor or a model that I've never actually met or talked to. He wrote about his anti-goals and his anti-day. So he thought about, all right, what would my worst day look like? And it would basically be back-to-back meetings and, all these interruptions and no time for deep work. And he's like, all right, cool. So that means that I'm going to avoid that stuff. And then what's left, I can kind of choose and kind of experiment with what I like to do. But I love that framing of like, what do I absolutely hate and avoiding that? Because if you just think of what you can add, like there's kind of an endless buffet of options.
Absolutely. So when you think about what you can add, you are thinking about, hey, I can try this, I can try this, I can try this, right? And then you overwhelm yourself. But when you're thinking about what do I hate that I can remove, your brain immediately knows what that is. You're not going to try and remove something. You are going to know exactly what you want to remove. So the guesswork is just gone from that process.
And from a functional business owner standpoint, I'm rereading Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Workweek right now, which is like, I read it really early on.
Problems with that book. But
yeah, it's ridiculous. Like the writing style is so absurd. And yeah, but from like a high level perspective, it's interesting because he's all about just like minimizing like your kind of work burden, right? And thinking creatively around how you can like design your lifestyle. And he's all about elimination, delegation, and automation. So it's like if you hate something, how can you, like, if you can't eliminate it entirely, how can you delegate it? And if you can't delegate it, can you automate it? So it makes me at least start thinking creatively when I identify those items. Oh, and also, I mean, if it's not important at all, like you just get rid of it, right? And then if it is important, you figure out a way, like you were talking about, you get partners for those things. So it really starts to reframe like how you think about business and efficiency, and helps you creatively work within those constraints. What are your problems with the 4-Hour Workweek? I'm just curious.
Let's just say that it is not a book for women.
Oh, yeah.
I have not met a single woman who was able to say that worked for me.
I could see that. Yeah, Tim Ferriss, I think his earlier work definitely attracted an army of tech bros.
Yeah, and also from a perspective of somebody who is living in a developing country, who has grown up in a developing country, the entire idea of outsourcing,
the outsourcing stuff,
to getting a VA for $5 and stuff like that, that's cringe. And I mean, no, pay for talent, pay for value, and it's why I believe so strongly in partnering with people. And also, your VAs and subcontractors, yes, it's totally your prerogative to go and find somebody within your budget, but that doesn't mean you lowball somebody, right?
Totally.
If you have $5 to offer a VA, make it worth their while in some other ways, right? Give them growth opportunities or something, and then have an end time limit to that, because that person is going to come in and help you out and grow your business. And then 6 months later, you're looking at a big fat check or something, and you're seeing that your business has grown, but that person who helped you grow your business is still at $5. That doesn't work out for me. That doesn't sit well with me. And so I'm like, no. So the whole $5 VA thing is just such a major, and I feel like it created such a negative impact on the entire VA industry that it set them apart. And the whole thing where I go hire somebody from the Philippines, they're some of the hardest working people I've come across. And so to caricature them like that, I'm sorry, I could go on for hours, but yeah, you get the gist of it.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. There's also something strategically maybe inadequate about that, outside of anything ethical. And this is something that with our agency, the podcast name is The Long Game. So we think about like, how can we play long-term games with long-term people? So we're almost always going to lavish on additional like, benefits and like make it worth their while as well. Because we look at all of this as kind of a long-term partnership. We wouldn't want to lowball anybody, because then it would be more of a mercenary relationship, if that makes sense. Like when things get rough or like whatever, it's like, we don't want it to be a temporary thing. So I think that attitude is quite temporary, ephemeral, disposable. And like the way we look at business, at least with Omniscient, is like, how can we bring whoever we work with? We have this heuristic of like, if we wouldn't work with them for a day, we wouldn't want to work with them. Or I mean, if we wouldn't want to work with them for a year, we wouldn't want to work with them for a day. I think that's how we frame it.
Yeah.
So yeah. Phase shift. Oh, sorry. Were you going to say something?
No.
I wanted to ask on the business side of things as well. You run Emails Done Right?
Yep.
Tell me about that.
Okay. The newsletter or the business?
Both.
Okay. So the newsletter was born first, right? This is January 2020. I am getting serious about building my authority. And I'm like, I was a content writer for 10 years. I don't want to write content anymore. And like, ever since I quit, I haven't written a single blog post in 3 years now. And I was like, every other person out there who's grown their business has done it through content marketing. That's just not me. it just reminds me of that person that I was towards the end of my content career, and I don't want to go there. And so I was like, what else can I do? And a newsletter was the answer, right? I'm an email, and I should have a newsletter at the very least. So I started doing that, and I remember thinking, like, what am I going to say that Val or Joe or other people in the email marketing world haven't already said? And so I figured I would be, cheeky about it and start doing tear downs and build ups and stuff like that. And then so that first newsletter is me reviewing I think an e-commerce email on Loom, and then just writing an email about it and linking it out to the YouTube video, right? But then the next week I woke up and I had an idea for the newsletter. And then week after week, I think it was just building a muscle where I started noticing these little things that nobody else was talking about, or at least not thinking about in the terms that I was. And so I started talking about that. And one of those emails was abandoned cart emails are creepy as hell, right? And that was my subject line. That was to date one of my most popular emails. And I had maybe 115 people at the time, but it was the right people because, again, I grew this newsletter organically. No marketing of any kind, just the first 100 people were people who knew me, right? So my network. And then every Wednesday when I'm writing an email, I send out teasers on Twitter that this is the topic that we're going to talk about, and stuff like that. And then I would have 5 to 7 people sign up every week. And so in about a year, I'm maybe averaging 900, 950 people now. But yeah, so that one email led to a invitation to apply for Litmus Live. And then somebody at Pinterest saw that Litmus Live talk. And then when they needed help with email stuff, they reached out and hired me. And so it kind of like the newsletter was the crux of it in growing my business. It created a chain of events that I'm seeing to this day. And so that was how, the marketing side of my business works. It's just a newsletter. It's the authority that comes from talking about emails on it. And then from the business perspective, it's SaaS and e-commerce, right? So I work on one big SaaS project and 1 or 2 e-commerce projects at a time, right? So onboarding email sequence are typically 3 months, simply because the VOC takes time. And then e-commerce projects are, I'm pretty fast gotten pretty fast at them. And so they wrap up anywhere between 4 to 5 weeks, 6 weeks. And so I find it easy to take on or sign a SaaS project as I'm wrapping up one, and then e-commerce projects as and when they come, depending on what's going on in my business, workload-wise.
Question about the newsletter. I love this idea because it comes with a framing that I often look at in terms of like what I'm doing in any sort of creative endeavor is what would this look like if it didn't suck? And this is how, the thing doesn't have to suck, but like, if you look at like the worst case scenario for a webinar, what would you say? Like it's 20 minutes of introductions and fluff, followed by a sales pitch for the product, followed by about 5 minutes of slides, and then maybe 2 minutes of the product or the thing you actually wanted to learn. So you flip that around and think, well, what would this webinar look like if it wasn't horrible? And then you sort of design it from like, it's again, sort of a via negativa approach, picking like the negatives and like stripping those away. And then what you're left with is sort of like meat. So in a similar way, this newsletter seems to be pointing at like what's bad about emails or like what you can kind of critique or tear down or take contrarian opinions on. Do you take individual companies or industries, or is it more just like an idea or a topic in email?
So I've done that where I've taken an email, but apart from that first email tear down, I haven't torn down anybody else, right? And that's where I say, even though I say that I pick an email fight every Wednesday when the newsletter is going out, but what I'm really picking a fight is the way the industry is doing emails, right? So abandoned cart emails, you forgot something in your cart. That's creepy, right? And every brand is sending emails that way. Like there are a bunch of different ways you could do it. Even if you just thought of it as a conversational email, it would just sound so much better other than a creepy, we were watching what you were doing on our website email. But yeah, so things like that, right? So again, I do remember tearing down one brand, and they were big enough. I didn't buy it. But it was something. So I bought something on Black Friday last year. right? And I got order confirmation and a shipping confirmation email, and that's it. And then nothing. And I received the product in January. And so within that I think 34, 35 days, they sent me 24 marketing emails. And not a word about my product, right? Even just a random email saying, hey, we're experiencing delays because of the Black Friday rush or whatever, and please hang tight, it will come to you. Here's your tracking number again. And when you were sending 24 emails, finding that shipping confirmation email became a hassle. Like I had to search the brand name and then scroll down and find that. And it was, so unless it's that extreme, I don't do it. I do love appreciating emails, right? So when the Black Lives Movement happened last year, there was a brand that handled it so well. They were an apparel brand that sells out, that it releases limited edition stuff every Tuesday, and then they're usually sold out within 2 days, right? So obviously they had the limited edition release planned already in advance, but they didn't send out an email announcing that. Instead, they focused on talking about the Black Lives movement. And throughout that entire week, they brought in experts and activists to talk to people and educate their subscribers and customers about it and how it was affecting their community. And I felt like, so I highlighted that, and that brand saw me doing it, and they came to me with an email problem when they had it. And so the newsletter, again, keeps turning into clients. And simply because I am talking about the stuff that people feel passionate about, that brands see opportunity in.
Yeah, a couple things there. So the reason I asked that was because of the latter example with the Black Lives Matter email content. I don't know if you specifically sought out this company. You definitely didn't, because it was more so you just appreciating it. But my first thought with something like Emails Done Right in the newsletter was, you could use this as an account-based marketing tool to essentially tear down companies that you want to work with and then sort of send that to them. I don't know if that works well. I know some companies do that with content. I don't know if I would like that if somebody tore my site down and then said, hey, we can do this for you.
I realized that it's a very personality-based marketing tactic to do that. I don't have that personality. I don't feel okay with pointing out somebody's flaws and then just, my thing is, if I'm tearing down somebody, they need to be so big they won't care.
Gotcha.
But the brands that will care will see how I did it, and
they'll like how you think about it.
Yes. And so I don't just tear down, I also build it up. So I present an entire strategy of how it should be done, or what missed opportunities there were that they could capitalize on, right? And so when you do that, you're showing your expertise. And it's something that I talk about in my course as well. Like, pick a fight with somebody who wouldn't care or wouldn't even notice. And so one of my students, when I launched the beta version of this course, tore down Kylie Cosmetics emails, right? And so Kylie doesn't care. She hasn't even seen them. But that single teardown has brought that student so many clients and leads. It's insane. She's like my star student just because she did the teardown the way I showed her to. And it was really just an email challenge that I'd set in the course, right? And when she did it and I reviewed it and I was like, this is so good, you should turn it into an Instagram post or something. And so she turned it into an IGTV, which then just won a life of its own. So it's really just, when it comes to content marketing also, sorry, I'm deviating a little bit, it's not sitting down and creating content for your business. It's taking every bit of writing or content that you're creating for even other purposes and then just repurpose it for yourself. Yeah. So you're taking a course, you learn something new, you are doing it. Yes, that's great. But then once you figured out how to do it, perfect it, and then put it out in the world.
Yeah, I love that. This is going to be the next thing that we try to crack, is this maybe account-based content. I'm not totally sure how to describe it, but that is really insightful to build up as opposed to just like tear down, because that content does seem to speak a certain message. And I like the idea of going after large companies. One, because there's going to be a lot of name recognition, so it's probably more interesting to do so anyway. But two, because you're not going to like hurt their business or their feelings if they happen to see it. Yeah. I do want to hurt a business's feelings real quick, because you mentioned like your bad example, And literally this morning, Native deodorant, fuck it. I ordered like a month or two ago, and I've received like 20 or 30 marketing emails from them. And it wasn't until I received one yesterday that I was like, hey, where's my order? Like, I feel like I ordered something. So like you, I searched through my entire email inbox and it was like buried, 20, 30 emails down. And then I looked at the shipping thing and it's like, this has been returned to sender, whatever. There was a damaged item or something like that. I emailed them. I'm like, hey, are you guys going to send this? Like, what's up with this? And they're like, oh yeah, sorry. Do you want us to send it to you again? I'm like, yeah, I paid for it.
You're sitting with my money. Yeah.
What are you talking about? But there was no indication, no email, nothing. It was very, very similar to yours. And it was to the point where I kind of expected a little bit more than just like, oh, we'll resend this 2-3 months later. It was like, I was kind of hoping for like a credit or an apology or something like that.
Absolutely.
And I got none of that. So I'm going to switch brands. It's like, you can definitely damage a relationship very easily like that.
It is. So. And it's one of the things I always say is e-commerce is the one industry that needs the most help, right? And these are all low-hanging fruits that a strategist can go in and fix and just cement their authority and be their email person for a brand, simply because you are going in and telling a brand, hey, this is easy stuff to do, change this, and then see how that goes. Right. And so it's why I love audits so much. It's me telling a brand everything that they're doing wrong and then everything that they can do to improve it. And it won't take you so I have sections, right? Easy to do, harder to do, hardest to do. And so the easy to do stuff is something that they can do within a day. Mm-hmm. And then so it's they start seeing the return on investment in an audit. And when they see their numbers go up or they see their customers appreciate it, it just makes sense. Okay, so this person saw an opportunity, told us about it. She's the one that should handle whatever email problems happen. So it's just these small ways that you can position yourself as the go-to person for email, or in your case, content.
Yeah. Question. So with the emails done right, you mentioned a couple contrarian opinions already, the abandoned cart thing. And from all of the clients you've seen, from all of the companies you've seen doing email marketing, what's something that you believe to be true about email marketing that most people would disagree with you about?
That it's a communications tool.
Mm-hmm. Right? And what do you mean by that?
Okay.
Like, what would most people believe?
Most people believe it's an e-commerce brand where you are supposed to send promotional campaigns, right? But if you're sending 3 promotional campaigns a week, it's a recipe for at best an unengaged subscriber, at worst an unsubscribed subscriber, right? Mm-hmm. And so there is no rule that says you cannot communicate in an email as well as selling it. So the beauty about e-commerce emails is that people expect to be sold to. And not many people have a really great perception of e-commerce emails, right? So if all you're doing is adding 2 lines of a conversation at the beginning, so if fall is coming and you're about to release your fall line, then tell them about it, build anticipation around it, and then just take it from there. Like, add an element of a conversation in your email, and then it's simple thing, but so few brands do it.
I love that. That's excellent. Samar, would you want to do some rapid fire questions unrelated to email marketing?
Absolutely.
Okay. Who do you admire professionally and why?
Ooh, that's a good one. So many people. But the one name I will take, actually 2 names. One is Prerna Malik. She is a launch strategist and copywriter, and I'm A, in awe of what she does. B, it's the way that she's managed to build her business while living in India. She was a massive, massive inspiration for me as I was growing my own business from Pakistan. And so every time I would want to give up and or get stuck in something, I would look at her and I was like, if Prerna can pull through, then I owe it to myself to do the same. And so just the way that she does her business, right? She may be a launch strategist, but I don't see her doing any of the typical launch stuff that goes out, that happens out there. And so for me, she's one of the people I admire most. There's of course Val Geiser and Joanna Wheat, but the other person I admire the most is Amy Posner. She is a copywriter, but also a business coach. And in 2019, I went to my first conference. I was the only hijabi in that conference. I was super, super nervous about it. Traveling to the US for the first time. This was Trump's America. It's like the Muslim ban had happened. And so I was nervous. And then Amy was the first person who made me feel really, really comfortable. Right. And now as I'm talking about and thinking back on that conference, there's another name that I want to take. It's Iman Zabi. She's the founder of terrain.io, but she got her start as a copywriter and a launch strategist. And then she went on to, build a SaaS, a course platform. And so she's somebody who is business acumen I'm in awe of, right? So she sees a problem and she solves it. She doesn't wait around for somebody else to do it. And I love that about her. So yeah, these 3 women, 5 if you count Al and Joe, are the people that I admire most.
That's a phenomenal answer. What was the conference?
The Copywriter Club IRL. So the first year it was held in New York. In 2020, it was held in San Diego.
That's cool. Yeah. Did you go to San Diego?
Yes, I did. And
it's a cool city.
It is. And it was March. COVID was just happening and everybody's like, the airports are not going to close. The airports are not going to close. But my gut was telling me. So I left 2 days early because I planned on staying the week because this is the one conference that my husband takes off from work so that he can stay with the kids and I can travel. And I was like, I have my 10 days. I'm going to make the most of it, right? And so I planned a little mini vacation for myself. But then the conference ended and my gut was telling me, it's getting tough out there. So I left 2 days early. And my connecting flight was from Qatar. And 2 hours after I land, I had a 5-hour layover, right? There's an announcement saying at midnight, all international traffic is being closed, incoming.
Wow.
So the flights that are in the air will be allowed to land. All the flights that have not taken off that were due to come into Qatar. So I just barely made it. And then I was able to reach home. But it's just one of those crazy stories.
It's amazing that you took your intuition and went with it. Because in that time, I remember nobody in the States, at least, was prepared for this. Like, I remember I had been traveling through Europe and had seen panic, and I'm like, all right, guys, this is going to be a big thing. And I came over here and everybody was mad that, South by Southwest was canceled. And I was like, no. This is going to get worse for sure. Yeah. But nobody believed it. So it's really fascinating and good that you took that intuition at that time. Such a weird time to think about too. It's like not that long ago, but feels like forever ago. If you could create your own category in Jeopardy, what would it be? And would you get every question right?
God, that's a tough one. Because I would absolutely, okay, again, that thinking process. Ask me about a category, I would not get every answer right to. And I have an answer for you. And that would be any question related to cricket or sports, right? So I love watching sports movies. I hate watching sports. And it sucks because I was born in a family of sports fanatics. Cricket is like a religion in Pakistan. And so I am looked at with horror on people's faces when I say I don't know the members of our national team. And so that is the one category I would lose out on for sure.
Do you have a favorite sports movie?
Every single one of them. So, and it doesn't matter, Hollywood, Bollywood, if it's a sports movie, I will watch it. But I'm going to say, this is going to sound really weird, but I really, really, really enjoyed The Legend of Bagger Vance. It's Will Smith at its best. And it's that random movie that even sports fans, people who enjoy sports movies, have not really seen that movie. But I really enjoyed it. It was fun. It was one of those. But yeah, it's the one that comes to mind right now. I'm sure there are others that I love.
Yeah, there's so many. I love sports movies as well. I also love sports documentaries. I don't watch a ton of live sports nowadays unless it's like actually in person. Used to when I was a kid. But watching the Michael Jordan documentary early on in the pandemic, it was so amazing. It was profound that I cried at moments, but it's like there's such a drama to some of this stuff. And like, I love watching just excellence in action and like seeing the behind the scenes. Yeah. So it's super inspiring for me to watch that stuff. Which talent would you most like to have?
Public speaking. Honestly, that is my next hurdle that I want to overcome. But yeah, public speaking.
I feel like podcasting and doing stuff like this is a good training ground for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Half of it, I feel like, is just getting comfortable and, knowing your topic. But I will say I've done a couple public speaking gigs and I still get terrified before the actual show goes on. For like the 2 minutes before, I'm just like heart's pounding, palms are sweating. It's awful.
It is. So litmus, thank God. So when the world shut down, and this is going to sound so weird, but for years I've been saying I have so much to do and so much to achieve. If only the world would stop, like for a few months, and then it did, and I accelerated. And one of the things I did was, as every conference was going virtual, I was pitching them with top ideas, just because I wanted to wet my feet. And I was like, I don't have to travel for this. That means I'm not spending money on it, and this is a golden chance for me to start speaking. And so that's what I did. And so I sent Litmus 2 ideas, and they said, would you be interested in doing both? And I was terrified, but I said yes. And that's another one of my mantras, right? Say yes first, freak out later. And so whenever I'm in growth mode, I say yes first, and then I spend the rest of the time freaking out. And then it's done, and I'm on the other side of it. And then suddenly it's not as scary.
I do the same thing. I commit myself when I have the inspiration or motivation, and then worry about the execution later. So I did that with an improv class, which I was absolutely terrified to take. And Brazilian jiu-jitsu as well. Like I've been for years just putting it off, but I'm like, all right, I'm going to sign up, put my money on the line. And like, then I have a commitment that I have to go do this, and then, basically figure it out as I go. Do you consider yourself more scientific or artistic?
Realistic.
Realistic?
Yes.
I like that.
Yeah. I'm not scientific. I'm not artistic. I wouldn't qualify myself as either. But what I am is realistic. So my backup plans have my backup plans, and my worst case scenarios have backup plans. So yeah, I'm realistic.
Pragmatist. I like it. What do you consider the most overrated virtue?
You're asking me really tough questions.
I suppose they're not quite rapid fire.
Yeah, sorry. But overrated virtue would be, give me examples of virtues.
Virtue, I think, it's something that most people would say is a very good thing to aspire to. So like honesty, politeness, what would be another virtue? Patience. Politeness. That's probably my answer.
Because what happens is that when you're too polite, or when you're like generally polite, people like to push your boundaries, and I hate that. And I'm a people pleaser, and so it takes me a long time to come up with the courage to reinforce my boundaries. And so I feel like politeness is.
I think so too. I think sometimes politeness can mask the truth of a situation too. It provides a veneer of like, oh, I'm just being polite, when really you should put the thing out there. But it's also, I think I have the same tendency to like not put up those boundaries. So being impolite to like put up a boundary is like actually in the long run a very good thing. I think that would probably be my answer as well. What's a career choice you considered but didn't pursue?
Public service. So my degree is in public administration, which is basically a degree that teaches you how to run a government. And so I would have been a bureaucrat if I had not gotten married and moved to the UAE, because I was getting ready to register for the exams that you have to give to become a government servant.
Oh, wow. Well, I can see the tie-in. I mean, I'm sure you have to have very strong communication and written skills for that as well. So there's some sort of like crossover.
Yeah, for sure.
And then sort of an easy last one, which is, what blogs, podcasts, and influencers do you love to follow right now?
Oh, okay. So Taylor Holiday is somebody that I'm enjoying following on Twitter. So is Val. And podcasts. Sorry, Alex. But yeah, I'm going to say just Twitter. Everybody on Twitter in the DTC community. That's it.
Yeah, I like that. That's awesome. Well, that's it. Thank you so much, Samar. This was amazing, super fun. Is there anywhere online people should go to find you?
Yeah, so if you want to find out what I do for SaaS and e-commerce businesses, go to summerowes.com. If you want to see where I go and hang out, go to twitter.com/summerowes. And if you want to sign up for my newsletter and see me pick an email fight, then go to emails.com and sign up for the newsletter.
Awesome. Sounds good. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.